Welcome to Inside Criminal Minds, the channel that will guide you through the darkest corners of the human mind. This is part 2 of the Glico Morinaga case. So we were just talking in part 1 about Mr. Ezaki deciding he would try to flee from his abductors, and that's what he did. He couldn't find the entrance the criminals were using because, of course, it was night, so it was dark. But he found a little door that he kicked off. He took the door's bolts as evidence for the police, and barefoot, he started walking. He finally found a train station, and there some people helped him, they called the police for him, and so on. So when the police finally arrived, they saw that he wasn't injured, so he didn't even need to go to the hospital, and they listened to his story, but they didn't believe him. They thought it was a prank. This is a bit confusing to me. I mean, I'm sure this man was panicking, or at least very stressed, and obviously he looked like he had been kidnapped, which he was. He had just escaped his abductors. Why wouldn't you want to believe him? Or at least try everything to, go back to the place he just escaped, for example, so you can find evidence and so on. Well, they didn't do that. They took him home, where he finally realized that his daughter was actually safe, and because he wasn't injured, he didn't need to go to the hospital. About an hour before his escape, a call came into one of the houses of his collaborators, his colleagues, and the call played the final recorded message they had him record while he was captive. The Osaka and Hyogo prefectural police were taking care of the interviews in the following days. They interviewed Ezaki for quite a long time, and apparently the two police forces were not on very good terms, because there had been an ongoing rivalry for years. So it's almost like they were working on the case at the same time, but separately. They were not collaborating in the way you'd expect them to. This is very relevant, especially for later on in the story. Katsuhisa said everything he knew and everything he remembered, but not only was he traumatized and tired, but also he was a shy and reserved man apparently. So he asked not to be interviewed any further by the police or by the press. So what we have at this point is just a strong hypothesis that the abductors actually wanted him to free himself. And investigators were able to locate the shops where the criminals had bought food and clothes for Mr. Katsuhisa, and they were both near the warehouse. So they thought one of them probably lived around the area. Unfortunately, though, this is all they had. They couldn't understand who the abductors were, and after a few weeks of silence, the police and the newspapers received a letter. It said, and I'm quoting directly from the case's Wikipedia page, "To the police fools, are you all stupid? What the hell are you doing with all that manpower? If you're professionals, then come on, catch us. We'll give you a hint. There are none of us among Ezaki's relatives, among the Nishinomiya police, or among the flood prevention corps. The car I bought was grey, and the food I bought was from the A. If you want more information, ask us for it in the newspapers. After telling you all this, you should be able to catch us. If you can't, then you're just tax leeches. Shall we kidnap the head of the prefectural police too?" Wow. So this is the end of the letter. It's just terrible. It's terribly good in a way. I think if I had been the police, I would have cried all my tears, because they were basically mocking the police and with public letters. So obviously people started feeling frustrated, they started judging the police, and at this point they had very little faith in the police. Obviously this is a very difficult case, but I do think maybe they could have done a bit better with the investigations. And obviously this is not all they did. So around the same time that the letter was sent, 6 vehicles parked in the Glico headquarters were set on fire, and a threatening note addressed to Etaki was found in the warehouse where they had kept him in March. So at this point, the game they were playing started becoming more dangerous, obviously, and it seems that the fact the police were not able to catch them made them bolder in a way. An important detail about the letter is that it was signed Kaijin Nijuichi Menso. I hope I didn't mess the pronunciation too much. And its closest translation to English seems to be the monster with 21 faces. And this is clearly a reference to the villain called the Fiend with 20 faces, created by a very famous Japanese writer called Edogawa Rampo. And why 21? Why 21 and not 20? Did they want to give a message? Like, we're the new, so more intelligent and evil version of that villain? I strongly doubt they meant there were 21 people involved, because it would have been a whole organization at that point. And it sounds a bit much. I don't know. Let me know what you think about it. However, for months, the monster with 21 faces kept taunting the police with letters that reminded them that they were still free to commit more crimes. And more seriously, some of the letters addressed to Glico's president were full of hatred, and they had, at one point, threatened to kill him. And eventually they sent a letter written in the dialect of Osaka that said they had poisoned some of their sweets in supermarkets and shops. This was a huge turning point. The letter was in the newspapers, so everyone read it, and even though Glico tested all of their candy immediately, people were understandably frightened. So they stopped buying sweets, and Glico lost $21 million, and 450 workers were fired, which is an immense damage for the workers and for the company's reputation. They unfortunately had to remove all candy from Glico from all supermarkets and shops, and what happened is in one specific supermarket, a box of candy was found on a shelf. That obviously caught the attention of the employees, and they decided to call the police and examine the video footage from the previous days. They spotted a man that seemed to be placing a box of Glico candy right on that shelf. So unfortunately we're talking about 1984, so the quality of the video is really awful, but you can judge by yourselves because the video is on YouTube. It lasts around 20 seconds. Just type Glico Morinaga video man. I'm also going to try and add a screenshot on my video. They couldn't do much with it. You'd need more explicit evidence to find the suspect in the video and make sure you're not arresting innocents. What happened then is that on June 22nd, Maridai Foods, a smaller company compared to Morinaga, received a letter that asked for 50 million yen, stating that their company did so well because of Glico's mishaps, so they should give the monster some of the money they had due to Glico's failures. They said, don't you feel bad for not giving us any money? Give us 50 million yen with used 10,000 yen bills. Then they gave instructions. Some were written, others were recorded, and the plan was quite elaborate. It was almost like a treasure hunt. because they would release the instructions piece by piece. So the first one said, send an employee to this dude's house for more instructions. And the second note said, go to the train station wearing a white blazer. Then use this ticket and get on a train. Stay seated until you see a white flag, and at that point, open the window and throw the bag with the money on the train tracks. Do not call the police, they said, because we're smarter and stronger than them. So I'm summarizing everything, but they were very specific. They even sent a diagram to make sure everything was clear. The police were informed, obviously, and they decided to send an undercover officer to the train station. Was this a mistake? I wouldn't know. This world would be complete chaos if we let criminals do whatever they want to do. So I understand why they didn't inform police. Anyways, the officer gets on the train, and so does a highly suspicious individual. He sat very close to the policeman, and he wouldn't stop staring at him. They said it was pretty intense, almost bizarre, and that's why they think he was part of the monster. He was averagely tall and quite young, between 35-45 years of age. But his most striking feature were his eyes, because apparently they resembled those of a fox. And that's what gave him his famous nickname, the Fox-Eyed Man. You can have a look at the picture on the video. So at this point, they're sitting in front of each other or next to each other. And remember, the instructions said, just stay on the train until you see a white flag. Well, they got to Kyoto Station, and brace yourselves, the police officer just left. Yes, he got off the train. I don't know why. This was a golden opportunity. I can't believe they let him just leave, just go. Imagine, after months of pressure, anxiety, losing credibility in the eyes of citizens, you have a suspect next to you, and you had nothing up until that point, but you just let them go. I don't know. You know when you're about to go to sleep and all your past mistakes decide to play a little show in your head? Well, this mistake would keep me awake forever. And it gets even worse, because the fox-eyed man followed the policeman everywhere until he noticed a second policeman collecting the bag. And at that point, he disappeared in the crowd. But they did nothing to follow him. I kind of hope I find another Japanese case to talk about so that I can see how much the Japanese police investigative techniques have improved, because I'm sure they have. So the monster found a bit of satisfaction in this, because in their following letter they said that they felt they had taught Glico a lesson, and Japan was too hot anyways. It was July at this point. So they planned to stop tormenting Glico, and maybe, they said, you'll hear from us in January when it's colder. In the letter, they also mentioned a 4-year-old child, saying that they're part of the group and won't stop crying because they want their Glico candy. As you can imagine, the monster with 21 faces had infiltrated into the lives of ordinary people. They would meet, talk about the weather, talk about family, and then they'd talk about the monster with 21 faces. Which, by the way, is exactly what happens in Edogawa's books. These criminals behaved in a way you'd expect a book character to behave. They addressed people directly in their letters, and they were so theatrical, asking for a bunch of money and then not taking it, abducting people and then letting them go. Although we're talking about criminals, and obviously we condemn their actions, we must admit they are an interesting character. I read an article on Atlas Obscura, I suggest you guys check it out, in which Kara Joimo brings our attention to the fact that people in Osaka are known for their sense of humor. The city is even called City of Comedy. Could these relentless smoking, sending jokes and useless clues be the Osaka sense of humor applied to the criminal mind? I don't know. I'd like to hear your opinion on this as well. But I think it's very important to consider, to be fair to the police, that they were dealing with a completely new type of crime in Japan. It's a crime related to capitalism in a country that was reaching its peak until then in consumerism. And Japan had always been a very safe country, as it is even today. So obviously violent crime was almost completely in the hands of the Yakuza, which, as most of you probably know, is similar to the mafia in Italy. And for all of these reasons, this was a huge case and a very difficult one for the police. Moving forward to September, remember our last letter was in July. The monster with 21 faces made a new move. They got in contact with another company, Morinaga. Morinaga, similarly to Glico, sells mostly sweets and milk products. The monster with 21 faces asked for 400,000 yen, and Morinaga said, "Yeah, no, nice try." So I partially understand why they did this. Like, maybe they had invested in their security, or maybe they didn't want to set a precedent. If we do it once, criminals might think they can just ask for money and we will give it to them. But considering the immense loss Glico had just had, maybe I would have complied. Anyways, I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision, because soon after that, a new letter quickly made its way to the public. I have it in front of me. It read, "To moms throughout Japan. In autumn, when appetites are strong, sweets are really delicious. When you think sweets, no matter what you say, it's Morinaga. We've added some special flavor. The flavor of potassium cyanide is a little bitter. It won't cause tooth decay, so buy the sweets for your kids. We have attached a notice on these bitter sweets that they contain poison. We've put 20 boxes in stores from Akata to Tokyo." And this is it. This is all they said. As you can imagine, people went crazy. Once more, shelves were emptied, and Morinaga faced the same consequences Glico had faced. Great loss of money, and they even had to cut down on the production of sweets for a while. They found 20 boxes containing poison, but at least there was a label on each of those boxes, as promised in the letter, signed by the monster. It said, "If you eat this, you'll die." However, they also implied that some of the boxes were poisoned but not labeled. At this point, they had become a huge threat to society. Their continuous offensive actions left people in a mass panic and believing that those supposed to protect them were not able to do that. It's one of the worst things we can do to a society, transforming something as ordinary as going to a supermarket into something unsafe. Fast forward to November, a new extortion letter was sent to House Food Corporation. They asked for the money to be given in the prefecture of Shiga, and on the day it had to be done, some agents were patrolling the area. As they were patrolling, who did they spot? Our boy, the fox-eyed man. Which is great. Not everyone gets a second chance, and now we know for sure that man is one of the monsters, or the monster with 21 faces. So they immediately contacted their superiors at the headquarters, and the superiors said, "Do not go after him. Stay there, wait for someone else to come and get the money." I mean, what? Of course, the fox-eyed man saw them, understood they were policemen, so he immediately ran away. And he most definitely informed the other people, the other, faces of the monster, because nobody came to get the money. An hour later, they saw him again inside a car wearing headphones. He drove off, and later that night they found the car he was in abandoned with no traces of him except for a police radio. Clearly, he had been using it to listen to police frequencies. During the following months, the police were labelled even more strongly as incompetent and unreliable, and eventually, in August 1985, the superintendent of the Shiga Prefecture Police was fired. Keep in mind that 3 prefectures were involved, so we had 3 superintendents. Obviously, there were lots of competition, stress, and pressure. Unfortunately, Mr. Yamamoto died by suicide because the pressure was too much and he felt like he had failed with the case. A few days after Yamamoto's death, the monster sent the following letter to the media. I've summarized it a bit, so some sentences are missing from the letter. It said, Yamamoto of Shiga Prefecture Police died. How stupid of him. We've got no friends or secret hiding place in Shiga. It's Yoshino or Shikata who should have died. These are the other 2 superintendents. What have they been doing for as long as 1 year and 5 months? Don't let bad guys like us get away with it. There are many more fools who want to copy us. No career Yamamoto died like a man, so we decided to give our condolences. We decided to forget about torturing food making companies. If anyone blackmails any of the food making companies, it's not us, but someone copying us. We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life. Signed, Monster with 21 Faces. And then the monster with 21 faces disappeared. To these days, we still haven't heard from them. I find the end of this story to be particularly sad because I think even if it is true that the police were incompetent, that's a fact, Yamamoto did not deserve to die. And I believe most of us can sympathize with him as we know how it feels to be in an environment that places us into very high expectations, and sometimes we can't see a way out because we start identifying with who they want us to be or who they say we are, and in this case, a failure. We forget who we actually are and that our identity can't be dictated by someone else. I wish we could tell him that. At least his sacrifice put an end to this, but that is called comfort. Is the monster with 21 faces a mastermind, or just an incredibly lucky bunch of criminals? What was their purpose? Are they still alive? Is there a bunch of old men and women sharing a dark secret somewhere? Do you think they had a boss giving orders, pulling strings, or was it more like a team working together? Perhaps we'll never know, but I would love to hear your opinions on this. Please drop a comment. You can also subscribe, DM me on Instagram. Our Instagram page is Inside Criminal Minds. Thank you so much for listening. Please stay tuned for next week's episode. Stay safe and take care.